Ferrari seemed to have the necessary potential, but the Italian Formula One team was ultimately unable to convert it into results. In the world of Formula One, this kind of outcome is not uncommon, especially when a team is playing catch-up and the car still suffers from ongoing issues. Starting from the third row on the grid is a tough pill to swallow, particularly for Charles Leclerc, who was extremely frustrated over team radio after making a mistake between turns 16 and 17. Seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton also did not appear happy with his result, although he remained noticeably calmer in comparison. It was unfortunately a cold shower for the Maranello-based squad, especially considering that it genuinely looked as though the Ferrari SF-25 had the potential to achieve a surprise performance in qualifying. Without doubt, on this particular circuit, the Ferrari engineers and technicians had managed to find an excellent balance during Friday's free practice sessions. The initial direction taken in setting up the car proved convincing from the start. Similarly, the subsequent experimental changes followed by multiple refinements seemed to be working well. Compared to Friday, the Maranello team made a conscious decision to preserve the setup as much as possible for qualifying, avoiding major alterations to the car's core performance areas. In fact, during the third free practice session, the Italian engineers had successfully addressed the issues faced in the slow-speed corners of the first sector. One of the recurring problems affecting the SF-25 is its lack of rotation, a trait that unfortunately appears to be deeply ingrained in the DNA of this Italian Formula One car. No matter how many new floor upgrades the team brings, the chronic understeer remains an ever-present obstacle that needs to be managed somehow. This limitation becomes particularly evident in the more technical, low-speed sections of the track. Mechanically, something failed to work as expected, as the situation at lower speeds significantly deteriorated. Simply watching the onboard footage reveals how both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were frequently forced to make corrections on the steering wheel. However, another major shortcoming was the car's mid-corner speed and overall momentum, especially in Sector 2, which had previously been considered one of the SF-25's key strengths and areas where it could gain time on rivals. The issue appears to be the result of a combination of two closely related factors: lower ambient and track temperatures and tire performance. The grip level of the Italian Formula One cars was no longer optimal under these conditions, which heavily impacted the entire qualifying session. Throughout the session on Saturday afternoon, it was evident that tire activation was not ideal, meaning the tires were not reaching their optimal working window at the right moment. There are specific issues within the SF-25 that the Maranello team has been unable to resolve, leading to a cascade of performance-related complications. Charles Leclerc himself mentioned this after qualifying, and while speaking to the media, he seemed notably unmotivated and subdued. The Monegasque driver referred to old problems that continue to linger, issues that, according to him, cannot be publicly discussed. He described them as weird problems, but reassured that a solution has already been identified. There is also another problem, one that he had never mentioned before, which remains unspoken as well because, in his own words, it's better that way. Still, Charles Leclerc expressed hope that a solution will arrive soon. The British crowd held on to hope until the final moments for a pole position claimed by either McLaren or Lewis Hamilton. But in the end, Max Verstappen pulled off another moment of brilliance. The reigning Formula One world champion capitalized on a series of small but costly errors by Ferrari, considered favorites coming into qualifying, who were ultimately undone by a combination of underwhelming pace and a mysterious technical issue highlighted by Charles Leclerc. As a result, the Scuderia Ferrari drivers found themselves behind not only Red Bull Racing, but also a resurgent Mercedes, boosted by cooler, autumn-like conditions that may deteriorate further on race day. To end the discussion on Ferrari's performance, it is worth pointing out that race pace appears to be promising. And it is precisely this factor that makes the result even more frustrating, as starting further back in the dirty air of other cars will make the race significantly more difficult, completely changing the outlook and potential strategy for Sunday's Grand Prix. This was perhaps the weekend where expectations for Ferrari were highest. Even rival teams had labeled the Maranello-based squad as the favorites for both qualifying and the race. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella acknowledged that the lap times posted by their rivals during practice had been impressive. the former Ferrari team member admitted that McLaren had not been in a position to match that pace when running with high fuel loads, and added that, to be honest, the team had believed those competitors were the ones to beat over the weekend. Even Charles Leclerc, despite his evident frustration after finishing in sixth position, acknowledged that this had been Scuderia Ferrari's most competitive technical package of the 2025 Formula One season so far. He noted that the car had performed strongly throughout the entire weekend, offering both excellent grip and balance, particularly in high-speed corners. According to Charles Leclerc, the platform had felt especially stable, more so than McLaren's. Surprisingly, even seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton shared a similar view, expressing an unusual sense of comfort with the handling of the Ferrari SF-25 chassis. Yet by the end of qualifying, Ferrari's drivers were only 5th and 6th on the grid, just 0.2 of a second from pole but still the slowest among the leading teams. In such a tightly contested session, every variable becomes decisive. A sudden drop in track temperature, over 10 degrees Celsius cooler than Friday, may have also played a role. So too did driving errors, such as the 10th of a second lost by Lewis Hamilton in the final corner, which exposed a persistent understeer issue in slower turns, something Hamilton described as inherent in this car. In general, both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton had to push beyond the limit to compensate for the SF-25's lack of outright pace, a driving style that ultimately led to small but costly mistakes. Lewis Hamilton reflected that they had to take risks behind the wheel in order to extract that extra 10th of a second. He admitted that, in terms of pure pace, the car did not seem to be naturally as quick as the leading competitors. According to Lewis Hamilton, this tendency to overdrive likely pushed the car into an unpredictable window, highlighting the urgent need for more overall performance. Beyond the question of outright performance, Ferrari must also contend with a recurring and elusive technical issue affecting the SF-25. Charles Leclerc, while remaining deliberately vague, revealed that from the second qualifying segment onwards, the Maranello team began to battle something unusual within the car. He described the problem as being highly specific and clarified that it was not related to either grip levels or aerodynamic balance. Instead, he referred to it as something particularly odd that makes the car more difficult to handle in high-speed corners. Charles Leclerc expressed hope that a solution could be found quickly, while also offering reassurance that he was confident the issue would not affect the team's performance in the race. Notably, this problem only emerges during certain qualifying sessions and does not present itself consistently. The Monegasque driver pointed out that sometimes the team experiences the issue, while on other occasions it is completely absent. He also made clear that the problem is not related to the usual performance parameters, such as grip or balance. While Charles Leclerc's comments are difficult to decode, they seem to rule out aerodynamic, balance-related, or suspension mechanics problems. A plausible theory is that the issue might involve fuel pickup irregularities. This could explain why the problem surfaces only during qualifying, especially from Q2 onwards, when the fuel tank is nearly empty. It would also align with the difficulty emerging specifically in high-speed corners, where lateral G-forces could shift fuel away from the pumps. And because the issue appears only on circuits with significant high-speed lateral loads, like Silverstone, the theory holds water. Whatever the true cause, resolving it must become a top priority for Ferrari. In a championship where just 0.2 can mean the difference between pole and the third row, every millisecond counts.